Thanks everyone for staying for this session. And for those of you who joined late, my name is Katie Chong and I'm one of the co-organizers for this event. And I'll be moderating this panel discussion on where can a photonics qualification take you this evening. And similar to before for the online attendees, if you have questions later, please just pop it on the chat and we'll monitor that. Cool. So yeah, thank you all the panelists for coming today. And we have this great, very different background, but all have the common kind of photonics roots in your background coming today. So it's great to have you here. So before we actually go into the panel discussion, I would like to do another show of hands. So this is targeting at the students. So if you're a student, how many of you would you say you're sort of at the final stage of your study? So you're kind of looking into, yeah, okay, a lot of you. So definitely coming for some career advice. Great. Okay, and how many of you are sort of wanting to work in industry, quite decided already? Yeah, and how many of you are more just exploring, kind of wanting to know what it's about and comparing? Cool, okay, so we get some good mix again. And so, and how many of you are here just for the food? Awesome, great, okay. So yeah, the goal of this evening is basically I would like to, no matter what you're here for, hopefully you get something back and get something out of this and really sort of understand some insights in industry work and kind of what the different career paths you can take. And you can see like all of the panelists have very different position now, even though they all started from a photonics qualification. So here's the format that's going to happen. I will first do, thank you, keep on my phone. So I'll first do the introduction for all the panelists, and then after that, they will each basically give their name again, just in case I pronounce it incorrectly, and then they will they will talk about what they found most, something they found most enjoyable in the current position, and also one word that they think is key to them succeeding in their current position. So that will be very interesting. Okay, so and then I'll kick off the conversation, kind of highlighting all the high-level theme questions, so then we really get it going. And then the second half of the session, we'll open the floor. And so if you have questions, then you can pop your hand up, and for online attendees, then pop it in the chat. So sounds good? Yep, cool. All right, so let's get started with the panel introduction. I will do the introduction. Yeah. So I'm not as good as Sarah, which will memorize all the speaker's bio. So I'm just going to read it off for me from my script. Okay. So we've already introduced Luke once. So I'll summarize it for those of you who joined late. So Luke is currently the Optical Research and Development Manager at Finisar. He did his undergraduate and honors degree in optoelectronics at Macquarie University, followed by a PhD focusing on photonic crystals, also at Macquarie. So Luke joined Finisar as an R&D engineer in 2009 and progressively became the manager of the team. So in fact, Luke was my first boss out of academia. So he's a very patient, caring, and great manager to have in your first job when you don't know anything about how to work in industry setting. So it's great to see you here, and thank you for coming tonight. And then we have Rebecca. So Rebecca is my second boss. Out of academia. So she shared a lot of management insight with me when she was here at Baraja. And Rebecca has been in the advanced hardware technology space for over 13 years, leading teams in research, product development, and operational capacities, with experience in telecom, automotive lidars, and more recently in the medical industry. So she is currently the supplier quality manager at Nanosonics, a medical company dedicated to products that prevent infection. So Rebecca has a rich experience across industry, and her management experience has definitely helped me transition from Finisar to Baraja, like very different kind of company. And she continued to share her leadership insights with me even after she's moved to Nanosonic. So it's awesome that you're here today, and I really hope that you're able to share some of the insight that you've shared with me to the students here tonight. Yeah. And then we have Andrea. So Andrea is currently a product manager at Baraja. Andrea started his scientific qualification path through a bachelor's degree in astronomy in the University of Bologna in Italy in 2008. He then completed a master's in nuclear physics at the University of Milan. After a short sabbatical in London, Andrea did his PhD in physics at Macquarie University here in Sydney again, where his thesis was on multidimensionally quantum entangled states of light. So Andrea joined Baraja in 2017 as the optical engineer in the R&D team. And then with the fast growth of the startup, there's a lot of potential opportunities in the career development. So then he became the optical designer, technical project leader, and eventually migrated into product management. So he's currently one of the 2 product managers at Baraja and has been leading a team of 25 very smart engineers, and I'm not one of them. So Andrea is actually one of the few people who interviewed me when I joined Baraja. So thanks to Andrea, I'm here today. And thank you for taking time out tonight to do this. Cool. And then we have Bianca. So Bianca is the department technical manager for the physics and astronomy department at Macquarie University, where she leads the team to support the research and teaching activities in the department. She is passionate about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and tries to bring these fellows to work with her every day. Bianca has recently completed her PhD in ultra-cold atom physics at the University of Otago in New Zealand, follow on from a bachelor's with honors and a master's in the same area. During her PhD, she was the president of the Otago OSA and SPIE chapter, actively led and engaged in community science outreach across New Zealand, chaired the IONS Koala 2015, and was a member of the OSA IONS Planning Committee for 2016 and 2017. And that koala is the same koala that Sarah and I met on Facebook. So I actually knew Bianca through my undergrad time in Otago. She was a year ahead of me and often shared with our year group kind of the insight for going to honors and research masters. And I've seen a lot of your outreach activities in Otago with the museum and all that. So it definitely gave me a lot of inspiration for all the kind of community work I've been doing since. So thank you for coming tonight. And then we have Matt. So So Matt is the CEO and co-founder of Redback Systems, an innovative spectrometer startup that builds fundamentally powerful scientific instruments that challenge widely adopted tools. Matt completed his PhD in experimental quantum physics at Macquarie University in 2020, focusing on engineering quantum systems with nanodiamond material. He continues a role at Macquarie in industry engagement, where he works to identify challenges in industry that can be addressed now and in the future with upcoming photonics technologies. So I just want to point out that like Matt actually works full-time at Macquarie in his industry engagement role, and he's exclusively working on his startup after hours. So this is really incredible, and I'm sure we'll hear from him like very soon about how he handles all of that. So thank you for joining today and not working on your startup. Cool. All right, so now let's actually do the 30 seconds intro. So we'll start with Matt. Sorry.
Thanks.
So sorry, I'll repeat that. So you will talk about, you pronounce your name again, and then what you enjoy the most in your current role, and one word you think is key to you succeeding in your position now.
Thank you. My name is Matt Van Breugel. One thing that I enjoy the most has actually been instituting a framework around the team, where the team is able to innovate and keep working closely and have all of our small group across all of the challenges that we face all at the same time. And the one word that I'd say relevant to this current role, that would be sweat.
Bianca?
So yeah, I'm Bianca Sawyer. I would say in my current role as the department technical manager for the physics and astronomy department at Macquarie is just the variety of different things that I get to be involved in and people that I interact with, all the different students, the academics, and just the wide range of different research that I get to sort of hear about and very, very peripherally help out with sometimes. And for me, probably the one word I would say is most important in my role is communication.
So thank you, Katie, for the introduction. My name is Andrea Tabacchini.
I'm glad I didn't try to pronounce that.
I know. That's okay. That's okay. So what I like the most in my role is probably the continuous rediscovery and revalidation of what a good product market fit has to be. You need that on an early stage startup because the competition is crazy. A word that describes me in this role or that helps in this role is probably enthusiasm. I would say extreme enthusiasm. That's what you need.
Rebecca?
My name is Rebecca Lodin. I'd say the thing that I've enjoyed the most in my role so far is just being part of an amazing operations team and experiencing all those elements of operations working together to achieve great things. I'll say 2 words if that's okay. I'd say the 2 words that have been most important so far are influence and determination.
Thanks.
So I'm Luke Stewart. The thing I enjoy in my current role is, I guess, when you take a project from a design to something that you can actually test in the lab, and getting something that works and seeing the team work on a project and coming out the other side and showing that all your design work's actually paid off and things are actually working. Very satisfying feeling. The one word I'd say, maybe perseverance.
Okay, cool. Thank you. You can go on to that. Cool. All right. So let's actually get into some more difficult questions. No. Okay. Maybe first off, I guess to Luke. So why did you choose to leave academia in the first place?
Particularly the project I was working on in academia, I didn't really see it was a long way from being something that was going to be used that I could see in somewhere in the community.
Yeah.
And I just felt very removed from that, and so I wanted to go somewhere where I could see people building stuff that was being used every day.
Okay. Cool. And maybe Andrea, do you have something to say on this?
Why I decided to leave academia?
Yeah.
Well, when I finished my PhD, I was so burned out from that I really wanted to look anywhere but university. I mean, a lot of bad things are said about academia, and particularly during the PhD, particularly towards the end of a PhD. But don't take me wrong, I think that was a great experience. Very hard, very challenging, particularly towards the end. Particularly if you are far from home, and sometimes you get homesick very quickly. But yeah, I think that I left academia a little bit because of that, a little bit because I was a bit misled by the all these paper-oriented kind of matrix. We touched base on that earlier in some of the talks. Yeah, as soon as I found the opportunity, I actually found myself more excited about that new opportunities, new career opportunities than staying in academia.
Okay, cool. And I see Bianca nodding just now. So you, because you stay in a university setting, but you're actually taking on kind of the professional track instead of the academic research track. So how did you see that transition, and what makes you do that transition? So in that transition from kind of, instead of research academia, you kind of go into professional, like technical management. So how do you see that transition?
How do I see that transition? I don't know if I know exactly what.
Is it easier, more
Oh, okay. Well, there was a lot of stuff that I did during my PhD and my time in academia that was outside of the actual science, being really involved in a lot of different committees, outreach, networking, professional events, conferences. And I think that the transition I found actually very easy, because all the transferable skills that you get from those things really apply hugely in the sort of professional role in the university that I'm in now. I guess I was nodding a lot to both Andrea and what Luke was saying, because I also found the same reasons for wanting to get out of that research part of things. It was the extreme burnout towards the end of my PhD, and also the not wanting to be fixed in this really tiny niche of science. And the type of PhD I did, it was really fundamental kind of science research, which is fascinating and sure probably will one day have very far-reaching consequences, but you can't really see where that's going anytime soon. And I sort of felt like I was missing out on all the wide variety of different kind of science that's out there. So I find that the role I'm in now, I get to see so many different things that are happening you know, in a lot of different types of research. And I found that, yeah, so I've been able to kind of keep my toe in the water kind of on the research side of things and be part of a university, which I really enjoy without having to do the part that was burning me out. So yeah, I found the transition relatively easy, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know if that's answered your question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
Cool.
So then I want to pass the mic to Rebecca, because Rebecca actually, so you said you talked about kind of changing like field, like from your PhD and stuff. And then so Rebecca actually went through like 3 different industry, right? You went from telecom to kind of a lot of automotive and now medical. So how do you feel about, like, are you excited by all this kind of new technology, and like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, each technology that I've worked with has been amazingly exciting in different ways. I think it's the enthusiasm, right? Like every single new product, there's so much to investigate. The first 2 places in Finisar and Baraja were both optics and photonics related. And then moving to nanosonics is something completely different, but it's like, it's opened a whole new world up to me and a whole new set of challenges. And that keeps every day interesting, every day exciting.
Okay. What do you like? What do you struggle the most?
What do I struggle with?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. Oh, I was going to talk about all the Excel sheets they use over there. So many Excel sheets. What's the most challenging? I don't. Every challenge is kind of exciting in its own way. So I think the new technology, it's a bit foreign. There's a lot for me to learn. The medical regulation is a little bit different as well, and takes a little bit of time to get used to, and it influences the rate of change. Mm-hmm. So, but I think the attitude of the team is to work on that and to try and improve and to get better all the time. So I think as long as the team is excited and motivated to get things done, then they happen.
Okay, cool. Talking about struggles, I want to hear from Matt. So how do you see the whole working full-time and then working on a startup part-time? Like, what's the biggest struggle?
There's no doubt that there's a lot of early starts and there's a lot of late nights. And the hardest part is coming home at the end of the day and then you want to switch off, but you go, okay, keep on and just change what I'm doing into my startup and building the startup. But I think there's something really important there, and that's that we are actually a startup, right? So we're very early stage, and there's just the 6 co-founders. So there's no that we have titles and we have areas of responsibility. I wouldn't think of it as a traditional organizational chart where you have a person at the top and then that tree that flows down. So something that I've really focused on is building the framework for the team so that the team can be resilient to the workload that we have or challenges that we face. And so going back to work-life balance, that building that framework and instituting that so that the team can be resilient and can tackle tasks, I think that allows us all to take that balance and maybe other priorities in our life when they come up, and the team can adapt and carry that load. So yeah, work-life balance is really important. And so building the framework in the startup really helps with that.
Would you advise that to like students, or not students, like people finish their PhD and still need to finish their thesis while writing?
Yeah, finishing your thesis is tough, and it took me a long time to write up as well. Work-life balance is important because we heard already a couple of times, like writing your thesis can really burn you out.
Okay, cool, thank you. Yeah, let's switch gear a little bit and talk about something the students would really like to hear, I believe. So if we can pass the mic to Luke. So so as a manager who's been hiring, what advice would you give to the students? Like, kind of what do you actually look for in a candidates, and in terms of like the interview performance or the profile? Like, what kind of things do you look in them when they're coming for interview, or even in general?
So coming for an interview, I guess in an R&D role, some obviously good technical ability is important. But the other things, I guess, good communication. So being able to sit there and have good communication with that person you're going to be working with every day is really important. If someone's technically brilliant, but you can't get your point across, or you've got some communication barrier, it's really tricky. So like sitting down with someone and going through some slightly technical things and getting engaged on communication is good. And I also like to see how people respond to a technical question they may not have seen before, and not necessarily get the right answer, but just go through and think about how they would get the answer, or explain, you know, what they would see as an issue in solving a certain problem. So yeah, just sort of getting engaged in how they think and whether they're a good fit for the team, and we can work together.
Yeah. So do you think like kind of the culture fit, like that is more important than the technical skills, or like the other way around?
It's hard. You just got to find, if you have a few candidates that are all going to be different, it's really a judgment call at the end of the day. So yeah, it's a hard call. I think it's an overall package. You got to see who you think is going to be the best fit and is going to work well.
Okay, cool. Rebecca, do you have anything on that? Because I think you hire a lot of people into Baraja. So
Yeah, so I'd echo a lot of what Luke said. We've had some interesting experiences. I remember for Andrea, we went to Macquarie Uni and we saw this lab bench and it was covered in optics. And we said, I don't care who it is, they're coming to Baraja. And then we found out it was Andrea. That's one way to do it. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. So yeah, that's one style. The other, I think, as Luke said, it's that combination of technical competence and then also, you know, emotional competence. So being able to, you know, that's your personal competence and also your relationship competence. And I think, you know, what Luke mentioned, asking some tricky questions, identifying how that person communicates, how they deal with a little bit of struggle, something that's a little bit different, you know, is a really good way to do it. I think being enthusiastic is really, really important. You know, skills can be learnt. You can take time and teach people things. And if they're willing to learn and if they're willing to improve, to me, that's a really important part of the hiring process. Yeah.
Cool. And what about, like, say, you have kind of moved into a manager role. What advice would you give to like students or the early career professional listening online or in the audience here in terms of like getting into management? Like what would be like kind of a key quality that someone would need to have or someone should develop?
I think when a lot of people come from university, or you know, from their technical competence building, that skill is pretty strong. I think the next part is really to work on that, I guess, the EQ. So working on your, you know, personal competence, your ability to be driven yourself, you know, to have control of what you're doing, and also your emotional or your relationship competence. So making sure that you can work with people. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if no one wants to work with you, then you've got a really limited tool set to be able to influence and to be able to get things done. If you're, you know, Sibby here? Sibby always used to tell me, he said, you know, be the person that everybody wants to work with and you'll be able to get things done much, much easier.
Okay, cool. And Luke, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so then I would like to talk to Andrea a little bit more because Andrea's role is product manager. Like before I came to Baraja, I've never heard of this role. Maybe can you speak a little bit about what a product manager do?
Of course, my dream job was always product manager.
Oh yeah?
No, I never heard it either. To be honest, I was struggling to understand what a product manager was before we had the needs for a product manager at Baraja. So my evolution at Baraja as sort of my roles at Baraja went very quickly from very high technical to product management. And so when I first joined the company, I was in the optics team. Rebecca was my first manager. But back then, optics team was really the R of R&D. So I was doing a lot of research. Then we moved to a next step of the company, and I was more like optical designer. Then there was an opportunity to become a technical project leader, took that opportunity, and now product management. This last step is the biggest, I would say, the biggest gap, which I wasn't sure how to do or whether I was going to ever be able to do. Really, one thing I want to share with you guys is that I wasn't really ready for that. It's not that I took a course and I was like, okay, done. I've done all my exams. Now I got all the knowledge. I go forward. I couldn't even find, many people could give me good advice, even within the company or outside the company, because everybody was a bit new about this idea, right? So when the company became from engineering driven to product driven 1.5 years ago, it was really, really interesting. I think that everybody could see my interest in that. I tried to take more and more responsibilities to get towards that direction. And the more I was taking those responsibilities, the more I realized that that was my way forward. And then one day, I remember on a weekend, Federico, the co-founder together with Sibi of Baraja, so he called me, he was like, look, Andrea, we need in this new stage of the company, we need a product manager. I need you to step up, and here I am.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, now actually before we go to the floor, I want to ask a diversity question to Bianca and Matt. So Bianca, please. So Bianca has actually done a lot of EDI work. So now you are, especially in New Zealand. So now coming to Australia, how do you see that in the academia world, in sort of what you're seeing, and also in industry? And is there what can we do about it?
What can we do about it is a really hard question. I guess something that I have noticed coming from, I wouldn't say it's the difference between New Zealand and Australia, because I don't have a broad knowledge of what New Zealand's like and what Australia's like, but I do know that the physics department I was in at my university at Otago did a little bit of sort of EDI, so equity, diversity and inclusion sort of work, but it was very limited and it was mostly student driven, like myself and a student colleague at the time made sort of the first women in science type group, and it was entirely student driven. There wasn't much sort of behind it in terms of staff or anything like that. Now coming here at Macquarie University, I've found that the department I work in now is a lot more supportive and almost more mature in terms of their EDI strategy, and it's driven from sort of the top down rather than sort of the bottom up, although I think it sort of goes that way a little bit as well. So that's something I've noticed and something that I've found really, really valuable. I didn't know that it was something I was missing when I was at Otago, but it's something that I've really valued since I got here. In terms of what we can do about it, I mean, I don't know. That's a really hard question. And it takes a lot of different people to brainstorm and answer that one. I think a big part of what we can do is we can listen to the people who are in the minority groups in sciences, whether that be women or other gender minorities, Indigenous groups, or lots of different minorities, disabled people. I think there's a lot of musing that goes on about what can we do for these people, but I think that asking them more what they want and then listening to it is really important. And yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Really, what else to say on that one?
No, yeah, thanks for the insights.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we have a super difficult question from Matt that's submitted by Sarah. So Matt has a startup of 4 white male. 6. So we want to know, why is that?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question that anybody should be asking, to be put frankly. So, diversity brings with it a different set of skills and a new way of looking at things. And there's absolutely no question that we need to have a diverse team if we're going to scale as a company, right? And so, yeah, so we have 6 white people, 6 white males, and we feel that's a reflection of, the industry that we were there working in. But we just heard, and quite proudly, the physics department at Macquarie is really trying to challenge this, and now we're going to be trying to challenge that as a team and really, really focus on building diversity. So many, many benefits that come with it, and it's also the right thing to do.
Thank you. So now we'll open to the floor. If you guys have any questions, put your hand up and Sarah will run to you and pass you the mic.
If not, Katie will keep asking questions. So, all right.
Okay, so it's a bit of an open question, but I think almost all of you spoke about having to quickly wrap your head around new technology quite rapidly. So I was wondering if you had any advice, the best way to learn a new technology as quickly as possible.
I'd say don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. I asked Steve a lot of stupid questions when I first started. But if you don't ask them, you don't know. And you can often get caught trying to just go along and never understand it properly if you don't ask.
Yep, yeah, I completely agree. Every time I start, I talk to everybody I can and just ask them about what their role is, what do they know about the technology, and just, you know, the team in the company is there to help you, and usually, people are very generous and wanting to help you out and help you understand. So I'd say leverage the team around you.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. If you start kind of isolating yourself and trying to read and do a research and read more and more and more, you end up going down a rabbit hole that never kind of fulfills your need of learning what the technology is, and at the end of the day, you're gonna also miss the small details that makes a difference. So I agree with them. The best thing to do is to talk with everybody, and typically, if you are joining a company where the culture is decent, people will be happy to actually explain and go through it, even at a coffee, at a lunch or stuff. That's what I'll do.
I don't have a whole lot to add because I'm not in a role where I am having to learn a whole lot of new technology really fast. But of course, I did do a PhD in the kind of quantum photonics kind of area. And the biggest mistake I made during my PhD was not asking enough stupid questions. So I echo that. And if I asked a lot more stupid questions, I probably would have got through it a lot smoother.
I completely agree with this asking questions and probing to learn more. And I think that's also important for the team, because every now and then you'll ask a question like, why do we do that way? And the person that you're asking will take a step back and think, that's a really good question. Why are we doing that way? So it benefits the whole team.
Questions?
Sarah. So Bianca and I were talking about this earlier, but I was hoping to get the rest of the panel's take on leveraging technical expertise and mastery into more of a managerial position and managing people rather than technology or maths, I guess.
Who do you want to answer your question?
I guess. All right, Matt.
Thanks, Karun. Look, I enjoy building teams, and building teams is something I'm passionate about, and that I have some experience from my life experiences and my outside university work. So for me, I was actually really, really excited to bring in a framework around, okay, we have a team, but how do we make them truly high performing? And so for me personally, I tried to bring in some key principles, mainly about a shared consciousness, so everybody understands the problems that we're facing, and then for those people in the team to also be empowered to make decisions backed by the rest of the team and to get in there and have a go. So I'm not sure that quite addresses the question, but I'm quite passionate about building teams, and I've had a great experience bringing that into managing a technical team.
Yeah, well, I guess in my position, I do manage a team of other technical professional staff, and I would say my experience is radically different to Matt's, because Matt's built a new team and has the ability to put that framework in place from the outset, whereas I've sort of inherited a team of people who are very, very good at their job, but have been doing that job for a very long time and are somewhat set in their ways. And honestly, I don't have any advice because I've found it really, really difficult. I'm still finding it difficult, and it's something that I don't think my sort of background doing a PhD really prepared me very well for. But I do find talking to other people about how they do things, and I certainly have a couple of times gone to Matt, whose office is on the floor down from mine, and said, hey, I'm struggling to manage my team. How do you do it? And talking through things with other managers has been really, really valuable to me. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Actually, I want to add something. As a product manager, the difference with other managers is that I don't manage anybody. I don't have any person reporting to me. What I do manage is the product itself. When you go from a technical role to a product management role, the subtlety is that your technical background allows you to understand better the product, which is important, is essential actually. But you got to be careful because your role as a product manager will be to manage the product from the product point of view. So often I'm tempted to try to tell engineers what to do and say like, oh, come on, I've done it in the past. It's easy. Why don't you do it this way? That's very bad for many reasons. So at the end of the day, yeah, I use my technical knowledge and that helps me out a lot in my role, but I need to be careful and control myself on, don't do the technical role, allow the engineers to express themselves, to do it themselves. Most of the time they're better than me anyway. So, that's a bit subtle. Yeah.
Rebecca and Luke, you have anything burning to add? Just to go through? All right.
Yeah, I think Andrea made a really great point. And I think when you can leverage the way that you approach technical issues to approaching people. So as Andrea said, rather than becoming a technical influence on those people, you learn people skills like you would learn a technical skill. So, you read up, you learn the techniques to help people be the best that they can be in your team. And that's your primary goal. So I think that would be the transition. It's essentially a whole new skill set that you need to develop, but you can use the same approach you would to learning a technical skill.
Yeah, and I'd only add that I guess sometimes it sort of happens organically, and that as you become more and more technically proficient, you end up mentoring the people around you anyway. And that as you start to do that more and more, you can sort of start to take on that role in a team. But I guess the core sort of, management role positions where, dealing with people and project timelines, that sort of stuff I find harder to learn because it's not my background.
All right. I'm going to interrupt with a question. I guess it's more targeted for Rebecca, not targeted. So you've kind of gone through several roles.
Yep.
What made, was it an organic decision? Were you looking for something? What made you move on? Or when did you know it was time to move on?
I think it's been different reasons for different positions. Sometimes it's your life circumstances. Sometimes it's an opportunity. If the question is more like, how did I come to that decision? I mean, as a person, you have a set of values, things that you hold really important to you, things that you want to spend your time on. And the place that you work has the same thing, a set of values. And both of those change over time. Yours change over time and the organizations change over time. And I think it is worthwhile to reflect on that periodically. And if you get to a point where you think that misalignment is growing larger and there's, another avenue where you think there can be more alignment, then I think that's a signal that maybe it is time to move on. So, and I guess there's also that tombstone test where you imagine yourself at 80 or 90 years old and you think, okay, what would 80 or 90-year-old me think about this decision? What would they want me to do? Which is essentially aligning to your values.
I like that tombstone test. Questions from the floor? Yep. Sorry, we'll go up the back and then we'll come back to you.
Hi, so my question is towards the panel and towards Rebecca. You guys mentioned how important it is to have technical skills as well as EQ, that is emotional intelligence. So if you're hiring someone, how do you gauge a person's emotional skills? I know there are certain qualities I could tell
certain metrics that could tell how a person performs. But unless you put a person really in the field among people or peers and see them really behaving, how would you gauge a person's emotional intelligence?
My answer's really quick, so I'll just do it. It's really hard to do in an interview. There's only so much you can get from the interview process, and most of it you'll get once the person starts the role. You can get a few things, their technical skill set, enthusiasm a little bit, but really it is exactly like you said, when people come join the team, how they interact with everybody, how they respond to issues, technical challenges, how they work in a team together. I guess when you look through someone's history, sometimes you can talk through scenarios where they might have had to work in a team together to achieve something really difficult. Even things where people play team sports or where they work in an environment with a huge amount of people, and they've done well and successful. Like that's a good sign, but it is hard.
Yeah, I agree. It's tricky. It's a judgment call at the end of the day. You sort of go in there just trying to get as much as you can out of an interview. I think not so much for EQ, but even CVs give a gauge of what people's reports would look like. There's just a few indicators, but at the end of the day, you don't know until someone starts and you start working with people. So yeah, tricky.
I also want to add a comment on that. So I think especially for the students, like if I would say really put yourself out there as well, like on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff, because that's very important to show who you are. And if people are actually watching, they kind of see your growth over time. And I think that's a great way for people to have more confidence in hiring you because they sort of see how you have been growing and you're not just a one-off, like 1 hour interview person. So.
Yeah, I just have a general simple question. So in your PhD, you spend almost like 4 years learning particular skill set. I just want to know how much of this skill set have you transferred when you move to industry? And does it really, because we spend a lot of time doing one thing very well in our PhD. Does it, how much do you transfer when you go to industry?
I would say, to me, a PhD, you're focusing on one thing, but you're almost learning how to learn that. So that is transferable. But the way you go about learning, the way you go about trying to solve a problem is transferable. It doesn't have to be in the same field or anything.
So yeah, what Luke says is very true. When you do a PhD, specifically in a PhD project, you focus so much down at one single aspect of a single, topic of physics, for instance, and you are ultra specialized in that, and you feel like, oh shit, I don't know much about these other stuff that are actually very useful in industry. But the true thing is that during those 4 years, you teach yourself how to manage a project, how to face difficulties, how to learn things that you don't learn, and typically are very hard things to learn during a PhD. So that's very valuable. You don't realize it during the PhD, you realize it later on.
I suppose I have actually nothing to add, but to completely reinforce that you do learn to manage a project, and that's your project, and that project has a deliverable, and if you get it out the door at the end of the day, you get your thesis. Yeah. So you learn more than you think, and it's not just the science or the physics that you're learning.
I guess one thing I want to add to that as well is that I think the most valuable thing I learned during my PhD in a lab was troubleshooting, trying to figure out why something is happening that shouldn't be happening and doing that systematically. And even though I'm not in a technical role now, I still find that valuable in all parts of my life. And I think that if I was in a very technical role, I'd find that even more valuable. So.
Yeah. Yeah, another question. So I'm doing research right now, but I'm thinking also moving to industry. And what I like in research in academia is that it's very broad. So I can do for example, I do simulation, I write code in Python, for example, I build experimental setup. It's a bit different. I can build the, for example, experimental device and bit of electronics and so on. So a lot of things to study and to implement. And I like it, but what I don't like is that I would like to see product at the end and to be more determined goal. And this is one thing why I want to move to industry. But one of my fear that if I go to industry, my work will be narrowed down and I will not feel this level of, it will not be so interesting anymore. And based on your experience, because you've already done this transition in R&D in industry, it's a similar level of research, curiosity, and interest. Yeah, this is like my question.
So first of all, it sounds like you've got a good mindset for industry, if that's what you want to do. The main difference I found, like I said, as when I joined Baraja, the first like 6 months at least, or 1 year, I was working in the R side of R&D, so a lot of research. But it's different from research in academia. The main difference I found is that you don't have unlimited time. You only need to work on things that are actually adding value and improving a product, or bringing value. For instance, in academia, if you're trying to figure out something through an experiment, what's not, and it doesn't go as you expected, and you find something weird that is completely away from what the result you were looking for, that's still potentially super interesting. You may still come out with a very good paper out of it, so it's worthwhile investigating, and that's the passion side of it. In industry, typically that doesn't happen. If it doesn't work, forget about it. Move forward, do something else. That's the biggest difference. In that sense, yes, it's fast-paced. But keep in mind that in industry also there are different roles that gives you different visibility. You can be the R&D engineers who goes down and dig deep into the tech, but then you can be a team lead where you oversight several engineers working on different aspects of one product or multiple products. So it's not necessarily true that you only lose visibility of the bigger thing, and you have to focus on one small aspect. That's anybody wants to add something?
Thanks. I would, those are the skills. So from my perspective, where we're a startup and we're fundamentally 6 physicists, those are the skills that we built our startup on, and it was starting to merge together on, well, what could a product look like, that one of the components. So those are the skills that made our startup viable, and kind of going to build, measure, learn. And
we have one question. Oh, does anyone else have anything to add? I think, all right. One question online, which might be the last one, unless anyone has a burning question, shoot your hand up. What challenges can one expect or needs to be prepared for when they transition from academia to industry? So I guess that kind of follows on from the previous question.
So I guess one more time.
Yep. What challenges can one expect or needs to be prepared for when they transition from academia to industry?
I think it's a combination of what people have said tonight. There's probably a very steep learning curve in terms of, you maybe walk into a company that's been working on a technology for many years, and there's a lot of people who are deep into that technology, and you've got to learn quite quickly. So that can be challenging. And then I guess to the last question, there can be times where you don't get to see the end of something you've been looking at. You might sort of be running down dead end and you don't get a nice finish to that. You just have to go stop, move on to the next thing, which may not give you the satisfaction of solving something completely. I think that's.
Yep, I think teamwork is probably a big one. Working in a team, often there's going to be a goal that needs to be reached by a certain time, and you really need to, in some cases, hustle quite hard to get that done, and you'll need to focus on that. And I think, to Andrea's point, sometimes there's some amazingly interesting problems that come up that you wish you had just a couple of weeks to spend some time on and solve because they're so interesting. But you really need to focus on getting a product, and yeah, I can see the smiles. Getting a product out for the customer. So I think that's a big one. But it's a really exciting, dynamic environment to work in, and I think Luke mentioned it. That satisfaction that you get where you've actually turned someone's idea into a product that's going out into the world and having an effect and adding value is really, really satisfying.
Yeah, the biggest change I found is a change of mindset you need to face, which is when I was in academia, I felt much more independent and much more independent in general. When you start working in a company in industry, like Rebecca said, you are always working as a team, no matter how solitary is the project you're working on. At the end of the day, it's a team effort. Eventually it's the whole company. So you need to deliver. Others depend on you, on your efforts, on your ability to deliver on time, to deliver something that is good. So that's a big change in mindset and can be challenging.
Sure. Again, teamwork. But also there's a customer at the end of the day. So we're shipping a product out, and somebody is paying us money for that. So it's very much we want to get something out the door that does what we said it would do and deliver quality to a customer at the end of the day.
All right, so I guess that's kind of round up our evening tonight. Thank you very much for the panelists tonight, and we do have a stack of presents for all of you, and they are named so it won't get mixed up. So thank you very much again, and really appreciate your time coming this evening. And I hope the students really learned something from here, and I hope you guys are staying a little bit longer tonight, so then they can come and ask you questions if they were too shy to ask on the floor. So thank you very much. Cool. Thanks everyone. So, sorry guys,
Sorry, just as one last word. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you all for coming again. If you enjoyed the evening, that's great. Please let us know. Please connect with us because we do want to do this again at some point. If you have ideas of what you'd like to see or what you'd want to happen, let us know. If you're interested in being involved in helping us, let us know. But we hope that this can be something that keeps going on. So keep an eye out. We'll probably try to do something again this year, maybe. But we'll hopefully let you know. And again, thank you for coming.